John's not going to join us?
I think he's running a few minutes late, Lupe.
Ms. Cantu, you're muted.
I can't hear her.
She's not talking yet. Her microphone is muted.
Okay.
Can you hear her talking there?
I can hear you now, Clem.
Okay. We're going to begin our agenda prep meeting for May 4th. We'll call the meeting to order. To establish quorum, let's go ahead and do a roll call. Kathy? Kathy? Are you here, Kathy? Margie? Margie, can you hear me?
Present, I'm present.
Okay, Lupe is present, Miguel's present. Ann and John are the only ones absent.
Anne is here now. Her video isn't on and she doesn't have a microphone, but she's present.
Okay. So then we're going to start the meeting with 6 people and 6 trustees.
Where's Kathy? Where's Kathy?
I saw her come on and I see her little square.
Oh,
So-
I don't see her, so I was just wondering.
I saw her on briefly, so I'm assuming she's here. Is she here, Michael?
She is here, yeah. She has no audio, but she is here. And she
Okay.
can use the chat function as well as Ms. Halsey. If they have questions, you can just use the chat function. And then
Okay.
they can put present if they want.
Okay, so we're starting the meeting with 6 trustees. So that establishes quorum. Public comment, I did not have any requests for public comment today. So we're ready to begin our agenda prep. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Michael Cardona. Start with the review of the agenda for the May 18th meeting.
All right, Madam President and members of the board, just a couple of reminders. I am recording this, so as I go through, if you could just hold on because your voices will pop up unless I mute you, and I can hear some feedback already, and so I may mute some of you except for Ms. Cantu, so that we don't pick up any unwanted noise. For superintendent's report, item 5, I'll provide my usual update that includes child nutrition, transportation, technology updates, and any other instructional updates that we have going for both where we're at presently and then where we're heading towards this summer. I'm also going to give up a little bit of my time to Mr. Wozniak so that he can present an update on an item that you'll see down later on that I know some of y'all will have questions on, and that's the motion to come back to basically a regular state for summer, but we have some safety guidelines, and so Mr. Wozniak has been working with the principals and the department heads to go ahead and get that taken care of, and so we'll have him present. Under item 6A, academic update, Dr. Ruiz Mills will present her May academic update. Item 6B, construction update, Mr. Barton will provide an updated list of projects and where we're at. Item 8C is a SHAC advisory update. Ms. Dre will present that and she'll have more in detail, and we'll send you some more information later on. Item 6D, Mr. Hubenak will present House Bill 3834, which is mandatory. Hold on one second. I need to close my door. Sorry about that. They're cleaning the office. Item 6D, Mr. Hubenak will present House Bill 3834, which is mandatory cybersecurity training, and that does involve board member. Anybody who has a district email account is required by law to go through about an hour of cybersecurity training and also take a quiz. So Mr. Hubenak will present that to y'all so that we can get that taken care of. Item 7A, approval of minutes for the regular scheduled board meeting on April 20th, 2020, and special call meeting on May 4th, 2020. Item 8A, consider approval of budget amendments. Currently, we have 2 budget amendments. One is COVID-19 related, and one is an update on revenue. But we do have the potential to have 4 budget amendments. And as soon as we find that out, Mr. Barton, as he typically does, will send you the information as soon as he can. Item 8B, consider an approval to accept the Rodriguez Elementary bond project. Again, that's Mr. Barton, and as you know, he tried to right-size the board policy to accept Rodriguez as a completed project, which the board has to accept, and he'll have information on that. Items 8C, consideration and possible approval of an increase in district health insurance contributions. Dr. Baez, the next 2 items actually, item 8C and 8D, consideration and possible approval of 2020-2021 stipends. She will have that information in the budget workshop that Mr. Barton is going to present. What I can tell you right now is item 8C is about an $8 increase per employee, and it might be a little bit less because we do offer free telemedicine, and so the cost may come down, but about $8 per employee. Item 8D, she has previously sent you that information on the stipends, but she will also be available to answer questions during the budget workshop that Mr. Barton will present in just a little bit. Item 8E is Mr. Barton, consideration and possible approval, general pay increase for 2020-2021. I believe he sent that PowerPoint to y'all earlier this afternoon that he's going to be going over. Item 8F, CPR waiver for seniors. That's Dr. Ruiz Mills. We've had several waivers, whether it's for accountability or whether it's from other areas, but Dr. Ruiz Mills will present for our senior class. Item 8G is also Dr. Ruiz Mills. The instructional continuity while closed at a station is something we're required by Texas Education Agency to complete. Item HA, consider approval of SHAC members for 2020-2021 school year. Ms. Dre, and she's on this call, so afterwards, if anybody has any questions, she can answer those questions. Item 8I, consideration and approval of a resolution authorizing the defeasance of certain portions of the district's currently outstanding obligations and approving other matters incident and related thereto. It'll be Mr. Barton and also, I believe, Mr. Barton, I think, is going to be presenting that. Item 8J, resolution of the Board of Trustees of the San Marcos Consolidated Independent School District to end emergency school closure for staff and personnel. That's also Mr. James Barton, and that's really just to get us back onto a normal schedule in June, following the county and the city's health guidelines and CDC's health guidelines. And again, I'll have Mr. Wozniak present the May 18th. I'll give up some of my time so that he can present some of the things that we have to take, that we need to ensure that we take care of our employees if we start bringing them back in to clean the buildings and do all the normal business, if that makes sense. Item 9, closed session is authorized by section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. A, discussion regarding administrative appointments. And item 10, the board will reconvene in open session if necessary to take action on items discussed in closed sessions. We have been continuing the daily operations of the district, so our principals have been interviewing administrative assistant principal candidates. So we have elementary, I know the high school has one, Crockett has one, and then we have also the principal position at Mendez Elementary that they are conducting interviews on this week. We also have the athletic director, head football coach process that's currently going on, and then some other administrative, potential administrative recommendations that will require the board to approve or not approve. And I know that that was a lot, and so I'm going to mute myself and unmute Ms. Cantu, and then the board members if you want to ask questions. We can.
Okay. Okay, we're ready to take any questions. If not, we'll go into our budget workshop. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Ms. Cantu. Can
Go
you hear me?
ahead. Yes.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, as we move forward with the item, essentially calling our employees back and ending a number of things that we've done on the back end administratively. I spoke with the superintendent about this, received the agenda item earlier this week or today, and I just wanted to reiterate that as we do call employees back, as we do make some modifications to return to somewhat normal operations, as an individual trustee, I would be supportive of the ISD purchasing for our employees, personal protection equipment, cloth masks, things like that. I know there's a number of local that are, producing those things. And so I would like to see us explore those opportunities for our staff to communicate with them that although we are somewhat normal operations, that we would consider and explore providing those materials for them, including cloth masks and hand sanitizer as well. And second to that, as we talk about what the school looks like and what we talk about our fall 2020 semester looks like, if, the School Health Advisory Council, which I think is a very diverse conglomeration of individuals and stakeholders, can work with the administration to, evaluate those policies and procedures and the measures that were put in place to ensure everyone's health and well-being. I would be particularly interested and would like to be able to go to the community and say, all the things that the ISD is doing has obviously been put into place by professionals that we've hired to do the job, but that the School Health Advisory Council also, supports that and gives their blessings so that we can go to the community and say, hey, look, things that the administration is doing have been vetted by this committee that is, uniquely positioned to weigh in. Individually, I'd like to see those two things happen. However, that works on the back end with Michael and staff. I leave that up to y'all to do. But those are just like the two things that I saw going into our May meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? There being no further questions, then we can go on to our budget workshop. I believe Mr. Barton is going to give us the presentation.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to wait for a second for Mr. Fernandez to queue up our PowerPoint presentation. And while I do, I'd like to recognize, I think we have Ms. Denise Garcia in the room tonight. She may not even turn her camera on. She doesn't often seek the attention or the podium, but she's been integral to the process. And I just want to make sure you guys know that as our Director of Finance, she's outstanding and very much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Hi, everybody.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
We appreciate your work.
Dr. Baez, can you check on Mr. Fernandez? I think he got a phone call and see if he can queue us up here real quick.
while we're waiting, we want to wish all our SMCISD teachers happy Appreciation Teachers Week. Teacher Appreciation Week.
Yes, agreed.
All right, Mr. Barton, I'm pulling it up.
While he finishes that up, we are going to go through our presentation this evening with an update on revenue, kind of an idea of how the whole process has been impacted by the coronavirus and the COVID-19 impact. We're also going to talk about, at the end, have an opportunity for Dr. Baez to address any questions on stipends and any questions on the health benefits changes that are coming for us next year. But I know everybody's interested in our budget workshop, and quite a bit has changed since we met in February. Go ahead, Mr. Fernandez. Tonight, I'd like to cover 5 topics. The first one is revenue projection and the impact of COVID-19. The second is salary scenarios, 2 of those that we were given and 2 that we created. The third is a budget outlook with each salary scenario. The fourth is an administrative recommendation. We were asked to bring together a recommendation to the board. And then a fifth is a look ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Fernandez. The impact of COVID-19 on our revenue is going to be substantial. It's going to come in 2 phases for us, and I'm not sure why it changed our numbering, but number 1 is tax collections. We understand that our community is struggling through a very difficult time, and we are anticipating a decrease in our tax collections next year of about 2%. The other thing that we're factoring in is a decrease in our average daily attendance. That doesn't mean that we're going to lose enrollment necessarily. We're not expecting that. But we know when students are sick, they're going to be out for a longer period of time, and that impacts our revenue and our budget. So we factored that in. And then finally, the big challenge is going to be in the next biennium when the legislature comes back next year. The adjustment they're going to have to make because of the economic changes in the state could have a very severe impact on school finance. And so we're starting to see on the next slide, we're starting to see that become the general consensus. And news stories like this one, Mr. Fernandez, if you'd go to the next slide, are starting to pop up where not just school district officials, but everybody's starting to understand that there's going to be a dramatic shift in school funding coming next year. A good illustration of what's happening is on this slide. We don't talk a lot about tax rates, but that is the major impact of HB3, is to reduce the burden by local taxpayers. And you can see how our local tax rate has changed over the last 2 years and how it's projected to change for next year. It's pretty significant. And in HB3, the state is supposed to make up the difference. The problem that's coming is because of the economic challenges, they may not be able to make that full burden. And so that's where we see people talk about the unsustainability of HB3. On the next slide, I want you to see that we have made an adjustment for revenue since we talked in February. Because of the change in ADA and tax collections, we are showing a drop in our local revenue for next year. And some of that is made up by the state, but not all of it. When we met in February, I used $81,672,817 as our revenue figure. For our presentation this evening, we are using $81,011,090, about a $660,000 difference. So there really has been a dramatic adjustment to the challenges that have occurred just in the last month and a half. We have had to make some adjustments in how we budget. I think everybody recognizes that our budget last year was not made with HB3 in mind. Those rules simply weren't written. They weren't known. And so this is the first year that we've written a budget for House Bill 3. What we did three things. Number one, we created incredible collaboration between finance, human resources, and TLA. And I'd like to take credit with Dr. Baez and Dr. Ruiz-Mills, but it's not. It's our teams that have functioned incredibly since December at really changing the dynamic of our budget. Number one, we've been maximizing additional funding out of HB3. I've said it multiple times, but I'd reinforce it here. We did get additional funds, but they came with additional spending requirements. And so we wanted to make sure that we were spending our money in the correct places that advantaged the district. Number two, there was a thorough review of our budgeted positions, and the Director of Finance and the Executive Director of Human Resources spent weeks going through our files, making sure that they are spot on with no excess. And then number three, we've had to have, at least at the leadership level, a honest conversation that there's a new normal in our budgeting process. I'd like to talk to you about some of those themes. First of all, because of the change to current year values, there will be no unexpected revenue. In the past, San Marcos has benefited because we were getting state aid based on last year's property value and collecting taxes based on this year's property value, and it was always significantly more the next year. And so we've had unexpected revenue. House Bill 3 ends that. And so we should have a clearer picture of our revenue, but it's not going to be unexpectedly positive or negative. Number two, we have built a lean budget. I think the numbers that you're going to see will be pleasing to you, but I want you to know there's not excess built in to cover a lot of contingencies. We expect to have to come to the board if we have enrollments of students that are unexpectedly positive. We're going to have to come to the board for teachers. If we have claims like we had last month, an insurance claim at Bonham, we're going to have to come to the board to cover that. I don't know that that's bad. It's absolutely the board's function with budget, but we want you to know that we recognize that we're not building in a lot of excess into this budget. We're going to have a conversation with the board about these things as they come up. Go ahead, Mr. Fernandez. We were asked to look at the following salary scenarios. You can see down the left, we have about 603 teachers, 152 administrators, and 547 classified personnel. Salary scenario one is our baseline where we don't change anything. And so there'd be no additional cost for that. Salary scenario two would be a 1% pay increase. For teachers, that's about $500. A 1% administrative pay increase and a 25-cent classified pay increase. That will cost the district $666,201. Salary scenario three is a 1.5% teacher pay raise. That's about $750. For administrators, it's 1.5%, and for classified personnel, it's 50 cents. Overall, that's just over $1 million, $1,090,947. Salary scenario four is a 3% increase for teachers. That's about $1,500. A 2% increase for administrators, and a $1 increase for all classified personnel. That's an expense to the district of $2,068,310. And finally, salary scenario five, a 3% increase to teachers, again, about $1,500, a 2% increase for administrators, and $1.40 getting us to the starting rate that had been discussed, and that's an expense of $2.364892. I hate to break stride, but are there any questions on that before we go on? I want to make sure if there's anything directly here, we answer it.
Mr. Barton.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Lupe. I just want to make sure that with all these scenarios, these are going to be reoccurring costs every year. It's not just a one-time thing, right?
Yes, ma'am. These are permanent costs, and something we want to be careful of is our revenue is not going to change dramatically. So
right.
Any deficit we take on this year, we will have that most likely full deficit at the end of the year. We're not going to bring back a dramatic amount of money out of salaries that went unspent, and we're not going to find a dramatic amount of money in revenue. This is a very lean budget. And so I'd like to share with you the impact to the budget for each salary scenario so you can get an idea. And before I go through this, I'd like to say very clearly so everybody understands, we took a snapshot of our staffing numbers and our expenditures in April to prepare for this. We just had to let the numbers sit still so we could build a presentation for you. Of course, those things don't stop moving. So in the last 2 weeks or so, we have had some things occur that would be adjustments. Most of them are positive for our budget. And I expect when we come back together on May 18th, the numbers will look a little bit different than this. I don't think it's going to be dramatically different. We're not going to swing $500,000. But these won't be the exact same numbers we see on May 18th when the board comes together. For salary scenario 1, we're projecting our revenue at $81,011,090 and the expenditures at $81,303,087. That's a deficit of just under $300,000. And again, that would be with no general pay increase. Salary scenario 2 is a 1% pay increase and a quarter for classified personnel. That's an additional $600,000, bringing us to just under $1 million deficit. Salary scenario 3 is a 1.5% general pay increase, and that would bring us to about a $1.3 million deficit. Salary scenario 4 was a 3% teacher general pay increase, 2% for administrators, and $1 for all classified personnel. And that jumps to a deficit of over $2 million. And in salary scenario 5, a 3% pay increase, 2% for administrators, and $1.40. Again, well over $2 million, 2.6. Go ahead, Mr. Fernandez. Thank you. We were asked to provide an administrative recommendation to trustees, and we would like to propose that we do not at this time do a general pay increase and instead plan for a mid-year supplement for our employees. We are able to know what that cost of that supplement would be if we wanted to do a 1% supplement, about a $500 one-time payment for employees. It would cost us about the same amount as scenario 2. And if we wanted to do a one-time $1,000 pay increase, about salary scenario 3. The reason we recommend this is, number 1, to withstand the financial challenges in the next biennium. Trustee Costilla mentioned permanent costs, and there are a lot of uncertainties coming, not just for next year, but for 2 years beyond that. And taking on a permanent cost with a 3-year outlook that is very challenging could be detrimental, could be something that's very difficult to overcome. Number 2, if there is an additional shutdown, we want to make sure that employees and the instructional needs of students have all the resources available. And that would mean not spending that money immediately, but spending it later in the year with a mid-year supplement. And finally, we want to make sure we protect the security of the positions that we have. Again, there's a lot of worst case scenario thinking right now, but the worst case scenario is cutting positions. And that's not something we want to be doing in the course of the school year next year. And so that's why we'd like to see a few more of the facts become apparent as we open the school year and have students return. And that would give the trustees all the information they need to assign the correct amount of money to employees in the form of a mid-year supplement. There are some things that are going to change moving forward on the next slide, Mr. Fernandez. It is always possible that we have an updated revenue forecast. There will be, if the trustees approve it, updated insurance costs. The trustees also have the ability to approve our stipend proposal at this month's board meeting. And as I said, we have some minor staffing adjustments, and most of those are positive. We had some extra positions built into the budget, just less than a handful, because we want to make sure every salary is accounted for. But as we have some attrition, we've been right-sizing our staffing, and those are things that have been beneficial to the budget, and they should show at our next board meeting. And finally, on the last page, I'd like to propose a schedule to trustees. If this isn't what you had in mind, we can adapt. But to start the conversation, we're here tonight looking at salary scenarios. Our hope is that you pick 2, maybe 3, that you think are worth pursuing, and we bring you updated numbers on just 2 or 3 instead of all 4 or 5. This evening, we'd also like trustees to have an action item to set a public hearing date for tax rate and budget. Ideally, that would be when we pass our budget. And if it's on track and the trustees don't want to push till the end of June, we look like we could do that at a June 8 agenda prep special called board meeting. Again, that's just a suggestion. Trustees' action will determine what we do here in a few minutes. On May 18th, we will have 3 action items. One is to consider additional insurance costs. The second is to consider stipends. And the third is to consider compensation for the 2021 school year. And finally, on June 8th, if that's the date the trustees select, we would hold public hearings for tax rate and budget, and we would approve the budget. I'm going to ask Mr. Fernandez if he would jump back to, on to the next slide. And I think if the trustees had any questions, this might support them, or we can go into whatever slide was relevant.
Mr. Barton?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned when you were talking about staff that you have looked at all the staff. I think that in prior years, if there was a vacancy somewhere, I know you talked about building in some positions, but I know that in the past when there was positions open, that went part into the budget. So I think the rationale back then was that they wanted to fill it so they didn't have to come back to the board. When you built this budget, if there is a
Ms. Costilla, you're going in
add
and
another teacher, is that what you're putting together?
Ms. Costilla, you cut out just a bit, but I think I understand the gist of your question. One of the major efforts, and we mentioned aligning ourselves to House Bill 3, is making sure our people are coded correctly and how we're coding each position. So we literally slowed down and counted every position in the district. And then we made sure just those positions were in the budget. There are no excess positions built in.
Okay. Okay.
Anyone else have questions?
All right, that was my question.
Ms. Costilla, did you have another question?
No, that was my question. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Anyone else?
I'm having problems with my computer, so bear with me, please.
Yes. Any other trustee have any questions?
Ms. Cantu,
Yes, Mr. Arredondo?
thank you so much. Mr. Barton, on the slide, and I guess if Andrew can help facilitate this, on the slide that gave the various scenario, that one, yes. If we could, for a future meeting, however it needs to look, formatting wise, if we could see like what the 1% for teachers in scenario 2 totals, you know, same thing for like administrators at 1.5% in scenario 3, and then what dollar an hour increase looks like in scenario 4. So I understand that based on each scenario, you've calculated at the bottom, but if I could see what each of those percentage or dollar amount projections is separately, or I guess individually, that would help me better understand this slide, what I'm looking at. So obviously that doesn't need to take place now, but for future conversations in regards to salary scenarios.
Trustee Arredondo, the system we're using, and I think in past years, there's been a lot of tabletop math that supported this type of conversation. And this year we've built a salary module for each one of these scenarios. And to be honest, it does not break it out like that. It puts teachers and administrators together.
Okay.
And so I can give you a guesstimation, but it won't be a perfect answer like we want. But if you did have a scenario you wanted us to evaluate, and it was a different combination, we can put that together. It takes a couple days, but we can do that.
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely don't want to add additional work for the finance department. I guess for me, if there was a general estimation of, say, scenario 2, when we say 1% for teachers, what does that mean? Like, how much money is that across the entire ISD? Same thing for 1% administrators. And I'm just using scenario 2 as an example. If I could see what that was individually, that would be helpful to me. But
it's for teachers, it really does work out to be just over $400 at salary scenario 2, 1%. I'm sorry, $500 for 1%. So there's 603 teachers getting just over $500.
yeah.
And in salary scenario 3, that's 1.5%. That's just about $750. And again, there's 603 teachers. So I'm not sure if that leads you to some of the numbers you're looking for.
It does a little bit. I will follow up with Michael later, and we can discuss this offline. Don't worry about it right now.
Yes, sir.
I guess I have a question.
Go ahead. Who was asking the question? Was that Ms. Costi?
This is Kathy.
Oh, Kathy. Yes, Kathy.
Yes, I'm the mid-year supplement. I'm assuming that the one-time thing is not an ongoing expense.
That's correct. It's not the best case scenario, and it's not the best way to do a pay raise. It's not TEA or TRS compensation, but it is a one-time expense to the district. And at this unique time, that is our recommendation. If the trustees would like to carry that one plus another one into the May 18th board meeting, we could evaluate those costs.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Was there a
Ms.
reason?
Cantu?
Yes.
No, go ahead, Clem. I'll ask after you finish.
Mr. Barton, so that compensation, that one-time stipend, is there a reason you're doing it in January instead of December, as like that people need extra money in December?
Ma'am, we could do that whenever the board is comfortable. If we wanted to approve something in November and pay to employees in December, that would be fine. If we wanted to do it in January and pay in April, that'd be fine. Or to do it as a retention supplement at the end of their contract going into summer, that would be fine. It's totally up to the trustees and when you want to hear that item.
Okay, that's my question. Who was next that wanted to speak?
I was going to ask a question. Clem.
Me too, Clem.
Okay.
Whenever you have time.
Ms. Villapando, you haven't asked any questions. You can go next.
Well, my question, I know Mr. Barton said that if we could come up, settle on 2 scenarios and maybe propose that, but what if we didn't have a change to start with and then had the one-time supplement that you talked about?
I think in order to stay legal, we have to express the intention to do a one-time supplement for employees at the time the budget is passed. And so you might have an action item that says there will be no general pay increase at this time, but we intend to consider a one-time supplement mid-year.
Okay, could we have then let's say we went with scenario number 2 and have the additional also later in the year?
If that's your intention, you could.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Mr. Barton?
Yes, ma'am.
Since the supplement would only be a one-time cost, And I think somebody mentioned having it in December, and this is something that whatever the board decided on. And I know that the scenario 3 has a 1.5 and 50 cents for other individuals. But if we were to look at the supplement, I know, what is the total cost when you said $500 supplement, that would be for all employees, no matter who they are.
But the trustees
Is that what
can
you're
frame
saying?
it. The trustees can frame it however they want at that time. And so I don't think you would have to decide that now, but you have your general benchmarks here. A 1.5% increase is about $750 for a teacher or an administrator. And we would pick a number, I think, for classified personnel, because with midpoints, that can be a little bit confusing. But I think we can come to an agreement on something that doesn't change the bottom line dramatically, but is still a true supplement that benefits our employees.
But you hear me? Having a lot of problems with this computer. Can you hear me, Mr. Barton?
Yes, ma'am, you're coming back in.
Okay. So once again, the scenario 3 and the supplement, you mentioned something about a $500 amount that could be paid to the employees mid-year. And my question was whether this is $500 for every employee.
It can be however the trustees frame that action item. And so if it was $500 for every employee, what is that? Do you already have it calculated, or are you going to need to give that calculation to us? Looks like just over 1,300 employees. So I definitely think that keeps us in the range of salary scenario 2, right around $650,000, $660,000.
Okay. All right. I would like to see, I'm not sure, well, when are we going to have more discussions regarding these scenarios?
When we come back on May 18th, I will.
Are we going to have another?
Are you asking we are going to have another work session?
Yeah, I like the idea of a supplement given our situation right now and the cost that we have incurred with the situation that's transpiring right now. And we don't know what's happened in the few months to come. But I like that, but I'm not too sure that what would be the impact. Of course, if we're looking at about $1 million for supplement to be inclusive of supplements to our staff, a one-time thing. Is that going to be about $750 per employee?
Yes, ma'am. So that would look more like salary scenario 3, but that's about just over $1 million.
But once again, it would be a one-time thing.
Yes, ma'am. And Andrew, Mr. Fernandez, can you go to the next slide? She asked about impact. I'm not sure if that's what she's asking, but
yeah, that's what I'm asking.
That's how it would change our bottom line. It would move us to about a $1.3 million deficit.
Right.
And again, it's not a fixed cost, but it would be coming from general fund.
Yeah, but it would be a one-time expense, the midterm supplement. It would not be a reoccurring cost. That's what I'm looking at. This scenario 3, the way it looks, would be a reoccurring cost to the budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any more questions.
Anyone else have any questions?
Ms. Cantu.
Mr. Arredondo?
Thank you so much. First and foremost, Mr. Barton, I appreciate you bringing to us what personally is exciting, that, you know, we are as close to a balanced budget as I've ever seen, serving on the board the last 5 years. So thank you for that. And thank you for the work done by staff at all levels and campuses and departments. Personally, I understand the difficult financial times that we're in, it's a tough pill to swallow to say that we are not that we potentially could not approve a general pay increase, and that we would come back mid-year and offer some supplemental pay to staff. And I understand that, you know, it's a one-time cost and it's a stipend and all the other associated things that we like to describe that as. Individually, as a trustee, I'm going to ask and lobby and hopefully get the support of my colleagues to, at least at a minimum, approve some type of general pay increase for staff, with the caveat that if it's on the lower end, say for instance, scenario 1, that we continue to plan to provide some type of supplemental as we get more information from the state, and when we see what our collections actually are versus what they're projected. So individually, just as an FYI moving forward, so staff can be prepared for it, I'm gonna ask that we pursue some type of modest, reasonable, realistic pay increase, and continue to plan for and forecast some type of supplemental pay at mid-year.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Hanson.
Mr. Barton, could you tell us the fund balance at the beginning of this fiscal year and the fund balance that's projected at the end of this fiscal year?
Yes, ma'am. We began this fiscal year at just over $40 million. You passed a budget that was an $8.3 million deficit. So in theory, that moves us down to $32 million at the end of this year. In reality, that's not going to be the case, and we're going to update our revenue this month when we come with budget amendments. I mentioned in our quarterly investment update that we had already met our revenue target for the year by the end of March. So we're going to update that revenue. I don't think you can anticipate a serious shortfall, although with the budget amendments lately because of the coronavirus, I don't think we're going to be able to come in on budget this year. I do think we're going to be about $1 million short.
So about 39 million in
Yes,
fund
ma'am.
balance. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Cantu, this is Ann.
Yes, Ms.
Can you hear
Halsey?
me?
Yes, Ms.
Yeah, I'm
Halsey.
sorry. We have a power outage over here, so I'm on audio on a dial-in. So if this cuts out, that's the reason. But I just was hoping that Mr. Barton could please email us at some point this week the cost to the district of doing a $1 an hour pay raise to all staff employees that are on hourly wages, please.
Yes, ma'am. I'll look into that.
Great. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Ms. Halsey, because we're trying to work our hourlies as close to 15 per hour as we can. And I think several of us have expressed an interest in that. The way I look at this outlook with the salary scenarios, we can do a combination and crisscross different scenarios. It doesn't have to be just scenario 1 or scenario 2. It seems like the board has the power to choose where you could spend your money. And I know often we've talked about bringing up our hourly employees. Thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Halsey. Anyone else have some questions?
I have another question, Ms. Cantu.
Go ahead, Ms. Costilla. Mrs. Costilla.
Mr. Barton, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Once again, going back to being a reoccurring cost, and you mentioned that it's not just going to be for this year, but for the next biennium, which is the next 2 years. Is that correct? That we're going to be looking at the revenue not being what it should be given our budget expenses. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So having said that, whatever scenario is chosen and whatever variation we decide to go into, once again, that's going to be a reoccurring cost. Given what has been taking place and the hardships that our teachers and of course our students, everybody's been working hard, and maybe I'm dreamland here and maybe nobody will support this. And I know that you mentioned maybe more or less like a $500 mid-year stipend that we were to give. Once again, this would be a one-time recurring cost. But because of the fact that we don't know the future, the way it's going to look for the following year, and given our budget and our expenses, what would be the cost if we gave every employee, and I know probably Mr. Cardona might not like this, but what if we gave every employee, if there was support, $1,000 at mid-year?
That would be about $1.3 million.
1.3, but that's a one-time reoccurring cost. That
One
would
time-
not be something that would be going into the budget the following year,
Correct.
like these scenarios would. Because whatever the scenario is that is listed here, that's going to be reoccurring in future years to come. So that's just going to fatten the budget and looking at revenue coming in. Is that correct?
I think another way to say it is it snowballs. So scenario 2 would be a shortfall this year of about $958,000.
Right.
But they would cost us another $600,000 next year with no pay
Right.
raise.
Right.
So then that's you're starting from a point of about $1.6 million deficit, and it just snowballs. And again, it's just the fact that we have 3 years of an outlook that isn't exactly positive. And so we want to be a little bit cautious, and that's why we propose scenario 1.
Right. And then, of course, we already have on the agenda looking at insurance cost. Is that not correct for employees?
That is one of the items you will get to consider.
So that's going to impact our budget further.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Barton, how much did you say that insurance increase would be?
Dr. Baez can probably answer that better if she's available. It is
It's $8 per employee. It's $8 more.
But is that monthly? $8 monthly?
No, total. So right now, the district is contributing $378, and the insurance has gone up to $386. So it's an additional $8
Only.
only. So
But is that per month or for a year?
it's about $10,400 difference.
Because I
But how
support
much-
increase of $8. I feel like we have to help the teachers out. Teachers and staff out with that $8. It's not, doesn't seem like much, but I think that that's something the board can consider, helping our teachers and staff with that.
Ms. Cantu.
Yes, Mr.
Thank you. Similarly, I think we have created a precedent here in San Marcos that we're going to continue, hopefully, with the support of the boards, that we continue paying the monthly cost of insurance for ISD employees who qualify for that. With the understanding that insurance plan through TRS that most employees select is catastrophic in the sense that there's a very high deductible before they see that benefit. In regards to salary and general pay increase, I understand how a stipend might look attractive now because it allows us to say that we've given employees something, and it on, you know, a CEO in several years, on a school board in several years to, I think, remedy the unintended consequences of that. I know several years ago, this board invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix the salary and pay scales and compression that was caused because of this tradition of providing stipends instead of general pay increases. And I would hate to see the money that this board has invested recently to fix that, fix compression, fix those deficiencies when it came to salary schedules and hiring schedules. So again, I'm going to just err on the side of I would rather support a modest general pay increase with some type of stipend long-term, because I am concerned about the HR challenges with compression of 0-year teachers and 1-year teachers essentially making the exact same thing, and the domino effect that that has for tenured employees, not tenured, but long-time employees in the ISD. So that is a concern of mine if we don't provide some type of general pay increase, is compression and the challenges that are brought forward because of that. Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Mr. Arredondo. We've worked so hard at the teachers' pay scales, and that's been looked at, and I would hope that we don't throw them off again. Because that was,
I have a question.
Ms. Hanson?
Yes, looking at the salary scenarios, Mr. Barton, you gave us how much 1%, you know, what each one would mean for teachers. If it's not too much at the May 18th meeting, can you tell us what those mean for administrators and for classified?
Yes, ma'am. We will try to figure out a way to break it out.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Are you going to do that for each of those scenarios?
You know, our hope had been that the trustees would narrow it down.
Okay.
But if that's not the will, then that's not what we're going to do.
Okay, yeah.
I would like to see scenario number 3.
You kind of went out, Ms. Costilla. What scenario was that?
Number 3. Can you hear me, Clem?
Yes, ma'am. We can refine number 3 for you.
Or if possible, we could look at scenario number 2 with a 50 cents increase for classified.
That would be a good one to build on too.
Okay.
So you'll bring.
And I would like to also just have scenario number 2 as presented.
So scenario number 2 as presented, scenario number 2 with the 50 cent for the classified, and scenario number 3. Those are the 3 that we want to see spelled out with dollar amounts, right?
Yes,
well,
but I'm not sure about the rest of the board, so I have no idea.
Mrs. Cantu.
Mr. Redondo?
Yeah, I apologize, James, for this, but if people are asking for various scenario projections, similarly, I'd like to see scenario 2, 1% for teachers, 1% for administrators, with $1 per hour increase for our classified employees.
So we've created 4 scenarios now that we're requesting numbers with.
And
Anybody else? Are you done, Mr. Arredondo? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I apologize, Ms. Cantu. I was just going to say, if no one else requests different scenario models, I'd be comfortable removing the ones that obviously haven't been elected or supported by trustees. And then it'd be the one that Trustee Hanson requested, the one that Trustee Costilla requested, the one that I requested, and then the administrative recommendation for us to consider.
So we've created a couple of new scenarios and we're eliminating scenario 4 and 5. Is that what you're hearing, Mr. Barton?
Yes, ma'am. I'm hearing the administrative recommendation. So scenario 1, scenario 2 as presented, scenario 2 with 50 cents instead of a quarter, scenario 3 as presented, and then a new number 4 that is 1%, 1%, and $1.
Gotcha. That's what I heard too. So you'll have those for the May 18th meeting for us to look at.
We're going to get started. That'll probably take us about a week.
So, I'm sorry, Kathy.
And that includes the mid-year supplement scenario?
Yes, ma'am. That's scenario 1.
Okay, thank you.
So just as like a FYI for everyone. So I don't know, Trustee Halsey says that her internet connection is hit or miss right now. So I think she was disconnected, but she's following along, and I can provide this text message to Michael and staff if they want it verified. But she has expressed her support for the scenarios that have been requested by her colleagues and the administration's preferred scenario as well. So if anyone's wondering where Ann is on this conversation.
Mr. Barton,
Yes, ma'am.
If you have those ready before the meeting, like if you work on them this week and by Wednesday or Thursday, you have them ready, I would like to see them ahead of time. I don't want to wait and just be handed the numbers at, at the time of the meeting or the day of the meeting.
I understand.
Thank you for all the work you've done. I know that it's extra work that you're having to do to put all this together for us, but we really appreciate your work. Is there any other questions on any of the presentation? Not hearing any questions?
I just want to say I really appreciate all the work that the finance and the HR department have done. This is fantastic information.
We're appreciative of our administrative staff and all the time they've been putting in. And I know this has been a very special time with our teachers working from home and our parents helping their children. It has been a difficult few months, and I, for one, appreciate our teachers. And again, happy Teacher Appreciation Week to our teachers. My heart goes out to them because I know how hard it is to be a teacher, and we appreciate you all. If there's not any other questions, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Hold on. We have one more
another
item.
item.
We have another item.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's the other item? Hold on.
Item 5 is consider approval of date for a public hearing on the tax rate and budget for the 2020-2021 school year.
I like the date that Mr. Barton proposed. Didn't he propose June 8th?
Yes, ma'am. That was our proposal. We just have to vote on it.
Oh.
I move that we vote on June 8th.
Why can't we, when is our regular meeting in June?
I believe it's on the 22nd.
Is that too late or?
I don't believe that is too late, but we were trying to separate that from the regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay, and with this, is this June 8th, same time as the agenda prep?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we have a motion.
And I move.
I have a motion from Ms. Villalpando.
Ms. Cantu, before you cut us off and run, can I make one announcement? Because Ms. Halsey had asked me, and I believe you did too, and I just want to update the board about graduation, Trustee Arredondo and some others. And so I've been in contact with Ms. Presley. And so she says that currently right now, we did some checking. Initially, we were looking at May 29th. However, we're not going to get any support from anybody on that. We're basically on our own. And so what the campus is looking at is doing a parade through the city and then some type of virtual ceremony on May 29th, which is our normal date. And then we're going to stick to our contract that we have with Texas State, which is August 9th, and hope that by August 9th, we have, some semblance of normality and do a regular graduation at Strahan Coliseum. We understand that there may be some students who enter the military and others, but she'll try and do something May 29th and then something August 9th.
Mr. Cardona, if I can correct, I misspoke. The June 1st is our budget workshop. I'm sorry, is our agenda prep. And our regularly scheduled board meeting is on the 15th. I'm not sure if that changes the trustees' decision.
Ms. Villalpando had said something about going with the June 8th. Do we still want it on?
I thought that's when our agenda prep was. Whatever is better for Mr. Barton. If the 15th is good, I know having the meeting later in the month is kind of cutting it short. Last year, I think that we didn't have all the board members present, and when we voted on the tax rate, it could have caused us problems if we would have had a different vote. fortunately, we did have a majority, but it's kind of tricky if people have issues with the tax rate or whatever, or the budget. We need to get it cleared before the deadline. So let's see what we can do.
If we're aligning to agenda prep, we would hold our public hearing on the 1st.
I'm good with the first. Is everybody good with the first?
I am.
I'm fine.
I'm supportive of that.
Okay, so then Mr. Barton,
That
can
will
we,
work as long as we have everything.
I believe we will once we settle the salary. It's pretty much done.
then we're going to go with the budget hearing for the first and with our agenda prep, as part of our agenda prep meeting.
Ms.
Correct.
Cantu, I don't know if you want to vote on that.
Do I hear a motion?
No, I don't think you,
I don't,
It
you
wasn't.
can
It
vote.
wasn't on the agenda.
yeah, you
Well,
can't
it says
vote.
consider approval of date. Sounds like we need to approve a date.
I believe it's an action item, sir.
it's not an action, it's not listed as an action item. Could we just
Okay.
decide?
Provide direction.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, I'm supportive of that, Ms. Cantu, President McLaughlin, Superintendent Cardona, Mr. Barton, whatever y'all have to do to get the ball rolling to set that public hearing on what is on the board calendar, I think, as a June 1st and a June 15th agenda prep and regular called board meeting. If that is in alignment with what staff needs to take place, and if that timeline works for y'all, then I'm supportive of that.
So is everyone in
Yeah.
support of the June 1st?
I am.
That works.
Yes, me too.
Can I see a show of hands? Okay,
And Trustee Halsey just communicated that she's fine with any of the date mentioned.
June 1 or June 15th, as long as it's not an extra meeting. Okie dokie, anything else?
This is just kind of a personal comment, Ms. Cantu, if you'll indulge me.
Yes, we will, if you're sure.
I just wanted to, as all I think board members have expressed during these meetings and in ongoing conversations with staff, again, thank y'all so much for everything that y'all have done over the past several weeks. And I know one employee that we supervise day in and day out, the superintendent, Michael Cardona, as of May 2nd, I believe, was his 4th year anniversary with the ISD. So thank you, Michael, for your service and dedication to the district. And it's evident that you have surrounded yourself and the district with phenomenal employees. And I continue to be impressed by the work that's being done given our very challenging circumstances. So again, I think that speaks to your leadership. And I've never been more in the team that the ISD has had leading it. So thank you for that. And congratulations on 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. I graduate this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yay.
May
Hey.
the 4th be with you, Michael.
That's right.
Yes.
When you work with good people, 4 years goes by really quickly. So it's all good.
Yes,
We're in
it does.
a good place.
Anything else? Any other item? We can entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Ms. Halsey moves and Mr. Arredondo seconds. All in favor? Raise your.
All right, y'all. Have a nice evening.
Have a nice evening. Be safe.
Good night.
Wash your hands.
Yes.